The evening of June 24, 2026, began like any other for millions of Venezuelans. It was a public holiday, a day for families to gather and commemorate a pivotal battle. Many were at home, preparing for the evening meal, relaxing after a day of rest. The sun was setting over the Caribbean coast, casting a warm glow on cities like Caracas. La Guaira. The usual sounds of urban life filled the air. The distant hum of traffic, the chatter of neighbors, the laughter of children playing in the streets. No one could have predicted that in a matter of moments, the very ground beneath them would betray a sense of stability, unleashing destruction. At precisely 6:04 p.m. local time, the first tremor struck. It was a violent, jarring jolt that sent shockwaves of panic through every home and building. The ground lurched with a terrifying power. Walls groaned, windows shattered, objects flew from shelves. People screamed, grabbing onto whatever they could find for support. This initial earthquake registered a powerful magnitude of 7.2, with an epicenter in the Veros municipality, west of San Felipe, Yaracuy. Time seemed to slow as the brutal shaking continued, a terrifying prelude. 39 seconds later, a second, even more powerful earthquake ripped through the country. This second event registered magnitude 7.5 from an epicenter just a few miles away. The 1-2 punch devastated structures that could not withstand the double hit. The brief pause offered no relief, only false hope before greater fury. Cracks became chasms. Compromised structures turned to rubble. Seismologists later identified this as a rare doublet earthquake. Two massive tremors almost simultaneously in the same location. Near identical waveforms and close hypocenters made it scientifically notable and utterly devastating. The first shock weakened foundations. The second delivered the final fatal blow. It was the strongest seismic event in Venezuela in over a century, since the San Narciso quake of 1900. The immediate aftermath was pure chaos and terror, a national holiday becoming a national tragedy, the full scale of which would only become clear in the harrowing days to come. In the minutes following the twin quakes, a terrifying silence fell over many neighborhoods, soon to be broken by the cries of the injured and the desperate shouts of those searching for loved ones. The darkness of the evening was deepened by widespread power outages. Caracas, Valencia, and Maracay into an eerie blackness. The primary international airport was immediately shut down, its infrastructure critically damaged, severing a vital link to the outside world. Communication lines were down, leaving families disconnected and amplifying the sense of isolation and fear. The first images to emerge were chaotic and grim. Streets filled with debris, the facades of buildings sheared off, and cars crushed under tons of fallen concrete. The initial reports painted a picture of widespread devastation, particularly in the coastal state of La Guaira, which was quickly declared a disaster zone. What were once vibrant apartment buildings and homes were reduced to skeletal ruins. Slabs of concrete jutted into the air, exposing the private lives of their former occupants. Stuffed animals, clothes, and family photos scattered amongst the wreckage. The destruction was not confined to one area. It stretched across at least 6 states, including Aragua, Carabobo, and Miranda. The shallow depth of the earthquakes meant the shaking was intensely felt at the surface, magnifying the destructive impact on a population living in vulnerable, inadequately constructed homes. The human cost was immediately apparent and staggering. In the first few hours, official casualty numbers began to trickle in, each update more grim than the last. Initial reports spoke of dozens, then hundreds killed. By the next day, the death toll had climbed past 235, with over 4,300 injured, according to the health minister. But these were just the preliminary figures. Tens of thousands were reported missing, buried beneath the rubble of collapsed homes and offices. The United States Geological Survey's pager system issued a dire prediction, estimating that the final death toll could be tragically higher, potentially exceeding 10,000 people. Hospitals that remained standing were inundated with a flood of casualties, forcing doctors to treat patients in hallways, parking lots, and on the ground outside. It was the beginning of a humanitarian catastrophe, one that compounded the deep crises Venezuela was already facing, and a test of resilience for a nation plunged into mourning and chaos. The coastal state of La Guaira, a region known for its bustling port and vibrant seaside communities, bore the brunt of the earthquake's fury. The twin shocks, amplified by the area's geology, transformed the picturesque coastline into a landscape of utter devastation. What had been apartment buildings, bustling with life just moments before, were now unrecognizable piles of debris. Entire blocks were flattened, their concrete foundations jutting skyward like broken teeth. The proximity to the coast also triggered initial tsunami alerts, adding another layer of terror for the shell-shocked residents scrambling for safety. In areas like Katia Lamar, the scene was apocalyptic. Windows were smashed, pipes lay twisted and exposed. The personal belongings of thousands of families were scattered openly among the ruins. Clothes, shoes, children's toys. The earthquakes had not just destroyed buildings, they had ripped apart the fabric of countless homes, exposing the vulnerability of a community built on ground that shook with lethal force. Bridges crumpled, roads were split by deep fissures. Landslides triggered by the shaking blocked crucial arteries, effectively isolating entire communities. The Simón Bolívar International Airport, the country's main gateway to the world, sustained critical damage and was forced to shut down. While the epicenters were to the west, the seismic waves traveled with devastating efficiency to the nation's capital, Caracas. Nestled in a deep valley, the city's sedimentary basin acted as a natural amplifier, magnifying the ground's shaking to terrifying levels. The double shock sent tremors rolling through the sprawling metropolis of millions, turning high-rise apartments into swaying death traps. In the upscale neighborhood of Altamira, buildings constructed on soft sediments were particularly vulnerable. The city's skyline was irrevocably altered as more than 250 structures across the capital either partially or completely collapsed. People poured out of buildings and into the streets, only to find a new set of dangers. Debris rained down from above, and the ground continued to heave, making it impossible to stand. Informal housing, ranchos clinging to the hillsides, slid down in avalanches of mud and debris. Analysis later revealed much of the urban stock was unreinforced masonry, brittle and prone to sudden collapse. The city's hospitals, many damaged, were quickly inundated. Caracas, the heart of the nation, was grievously wounded, its foundations shaken, and its people left to confront a new and terrifying reality amid the ruins. The seismic shocks delivered a devastating blow to Venezuela's already fragile national infrastructure. One of the most immediate and widespread consequences was a massive power outage that plunged vast swaths of the country into total darkness. This sudden blackout compounded the terror and confusion, turning navigation through debris-filled streets into a perilous ordeal. For rescuers and civilians alike, the darkness was an enemy, hiding unseen dangers and hampering searches for survivors. With no electricity, communication systems went down across the country. Landlines were dead, and the cellular network was overwhelmed by frantic calls. Relatives abroad and residents were cut off from reliable news. More than 200 websites were already blocked by the government, a pre-existing condition that now exacerbated the crisis. The quakes also crippled essential public services. The water system was critically affected. Broken mains and damaged treatment plants left millions without clean drinking water. Popular Venezuelan American influencers like Lele Pons used their massive social media platforms to create makeshift information networks, urging followers to flag locations where help was needed most. These digital cries for help became a crucial, if chaotic, substitute for official channels, highlighting the stark contrast between the state's failure and the people's desperate will to connect and survive. In the hours and days following the catastrophe, the true human cost of the earthquakes began to emerge, and the numbers were horrifying. Initial reports were fragmented and often contradictory, a reflection of the chaos on the ground and the collapse of communication. By the end of the first week, The official count had tragically risen to 2,295 killed and more than 11,200 injured.
The number will unavoidably and sadly keep on growing.
The United States Geological Survey's pager system, which uses seismic data to model potential casualties, had issued a red alert, predicting the death toll could ultimately exceed 10,000. Survivor testimonies painted a heartbreaking picture of loss: a father weeping over the ruins of his home, a woman screaming the name of her missing son, a group of neighbors pulling a dust-covered child from the wreckage to cries of relief. Thousands of rescuers, joined by relatives and ordinary volunteers, dug day and night through unstable mounds of concrete, often with little more than their bare hands. In a grim acceptance of the tragedy's scale, the government, in coordination with the United Nations, agreed to procure 10,000 body bags, a somber preparation for the rising toll of a nation in mourning. The catastrophic earthquake doublet of June 24, 2026 served as a brutal teacher. It exposed profound vulnerabilities beneath Venezuelan society. The primary lesson was written in the rubble of over 58,000 destroyed buildings. For decades, outdated building codes, a lack of enforcement, and the widespread use of brittle materials like unreinforced masonry had created a ticking time bomb. The disaster showed the tragic loss of life was not solely an act of nature, but a direct consequence of systemic failures in urban planning and construction. The ground shook, but it was the buildings that killed. Another crucial lesson emerged from the collapse of the nation's essential services. The power grid failed. Communication networks failed. The healthcare system failed. Social media and the global diaspora became vital lifelines. Influencers and ordinary citizens created impromptu networks. They shared information. They located the missing. They directed aid to where it was needed most. Finally, the scientific peculiarity of the earthquake doublet offers a lesson for seismology and preparedness globally. 2 distinct quakes, or a single complex rupture. That debate underscores the need for continued research into complex fault interactions. As the immediate search for survivors transitions into the grim task of recovery, Venezuela faces a monumental and multi-generational challenge of rebuilding. Beyond the physical reconstruction of buildings, there is the urgent need to rebuild stronger and safer. Future homes, hospitals, schools, infrastructure must be built to modern seismic standards, capable of withstanding the known geological risks of the region. Just as critical as rebuilding homes is the task of healing the people. The psychological trauma inflicted by the earthquake is a deep and pervasive wound. In the end, the memory of June 24, 2026 will be etched into Venezuela's national identity, a day of immense loss, but also of incredible resilience. As the country looks to the future, the most profound way to honor the more than 2,590 confirmed victims and the thousands more still unaccounted for is to learn the lessons from the rubble. It is to build a safer, stronger, and more prepared Venezuela, ensuring that the echoes of this tragedy inspire a future where communities are protected and the bonds of human solidarity endure.